everyone, this is Lacko S, and welcome to a more practical series on the mission editor, where I'll be going through and showcasing some of the things you can do with the mission editor to give you some inspiration for things you can do with your own missions, as well as some practical examples to try out and experiment for yourself to include in with your own missions. We're going to start off this series with basically a trigger that will play that will detect if your player aircraft has landed at an airbase, and you can use this to basically end the mission, play a welcome back message, determine if you want to actually end the mission there, or credit even the player with a mission success for a campaign. Lots of things you can do with this. So we'll go ahead and I'll show my blue units. Like you've seen before, this unit is populated with aircraft. And I created a zone here called landed check as a quad point, and I set up the quad point to encompass the entire airbase to showcase something interesting that we can do later on, as the inverse of this flag check. So basically, what you want to do is you want to set rules for the trigger. Now, for mission complete. What I have set up here is basically there's a mission here where we're shooting down some drones and some eland flights. After both of those, after all those targets have been shot down, a flag will appear, and this is basically your victory condition. So you can include this or not in your mission, but doing this will basically allow you to have go out, have your mission be able to be successfully completed, and then upon returning from a successfully completed mission, this will go from false to true, and then it'll look also at these aspects as well. So you want to use a unit inside a zone, and the player in this case is named Captain Harold, and so you want to check to see if your player unit is inside the zone, and the zone that we have surrounded the airbase with is called landed check. So whenever your player unit enters this zone, enters basically the airbase zone here on the map with this landed check zone, this will ring true. And to determine if not the aircraft has landed, there are multiple ways you can do it. You can continue to pile on a whole bunch of different conditions. For instance, the unit pitch. If the unit pitch is within 10 or minus degrees, that'll account for any natural variation in the aircraft's attitude when it's landed. If it points up when it's landed or points down when it's landed. However, you want to match either like a unit's pitch and limits, or for instance, we can clone this to get some of the similar information filled out. We can go unit's vertical speed is within limits. We can also match it up with, like, say he's not decreasing in speed less than 10 miles. So he's above negative 10 meters per second or feet per second vertically down, or he's not vertically increasing his speed by 10 meters. So basically, he's flying level. You can also do this where you have units above ground altitude lower than 2. I would keep this to a relatively low number. I want to put this at 0. I'd put this at either like 2 or 3, just so that the aircraft might register as several meters above the ground when landed, just because of the fact that the aircraft has gears, and the gears raise it up by a little bit. But no matter what you pick between, if you want to use AGL altitude, if the pitch is within limits, what you really want to do, and in fact, you might want to match like 1 or 2 of these. You want to have something like that along those lines, and then you want to have it where the unit speed is lower than 5 knots. Basically, at this point, the aircraft has to be slower than 5 knots in order for this trigger to ring true. So matching up all of these together, your aircraft, in order for this aircraft to be considered landed, it has to be the mission has to be completed. So that basically the aircraft would have had to have left the zone and come back. Once the unit enters the zone, it has to be within 10 or within 10 plus or minus 10 degrees of pitch. It's above ground. It has to be lower than 2 meters above the surface of the ground, and his speed has to be lower than 5 knots. And all of these flight conditions are pretty much indicated or indicative of a aircraft that has landed. Now, one possible bug in here is that the aircraft could, if the pilot was really good, he could be flying at 5 knots horizontally and lower than 2 meters per second, lower than 2 meters, and at like nearly flying level. However, in that case, he's belly landed, so at that point, he's also going to be landed, just not in quite the way you intended. But this is a very foolproof way of getting the aircraft to land, especially to detect if the aircraft has landed, especially if you have the above ground altitude lower than 2. So adding these 3 all together will basically determine that the aircraft is indeed landed and that the aircraft is inside the right airport with the unit inside zone. And after the mission, after all these are ring true, it'll give the action. And in this case, we have the action of end mission, and the mission will ring as complete. And you can end the mission that way, or you can basically have a mission or a message that plays that says mission complete, and then you can let the player taxi back to a spot off the side, watches that our wingmen come in, stuff like that. So that's how you set up, basically, that's how you set up a trigger to see if the aircraft has landed. What you can do to see if an aircraft has taken off is, if the aircraft starts at an airbase like Vaznani here, let's go ahead and add our aircraft back in. Make sure that the landed check, or whatever airport zone whatever you name the airport zone, make sure that airport zone covers the entirety of the airport. So all the parking spaces, or at least all the parking spaces that the aircraft should be in, or might reasonably go to, and getting to the runway. So that if the entire airbase is covered, and he starts within the airbase, the only way he can go anywhere else is if he goes on the taxiways to the runway and takes off. So you can expect that your player is going to be trapped within the airbase zone at the start. And then to determine if the aircraft has taken off, you can go set rules to trigger. We'll start a new trigger up here. Go up here. And then you want to do, if it's a single player, you want to do unit outside of zone. You want to do the landed check. And Captain Harold was our pilot. So once your pilot exits the airport zone, which is only really which you can only really do with a cold start on the ramp in a airbase, is to actually take off. You can go ahead and play a message. It's like message to all. And with that, you can basically detect whether or not someone has taken off from the airbase on mission start. So with that, that's pretty much it for my video today. I want to keep these hopefully relatively short, and that's how you go ahead and set up your mission trigger logic to detect whether or not an aircraft has taken off from a base that he has started at, or if he's completed his mission and then returned home. You can also set up the logic with the same zone to determine if the aircraft has landed. So until next time, this is Laco S signing out. I do think the next mission I want to create, next example tutorial I want to set up is basically an artillery strike, where I'll go ahead and I'll showcase effectively how to trigger an artillery strike based on conditions. So until then, this is Laco S signing out.